Go. Yeah, hopefully you guys have all got your packs with like the wax and that in, and you've had a chance to like at least look at the tools and start to have a design about what you're wanting to make. So I know that the project brief this time round is to specifically design a ring. So I thought we'd have a look at where we would get started with the ring. So as pointed out last time, this is ring tube. So this is how it comes out of the pack. And so you guys have got a little chunk of it, and so this can make a couple, 2, 3, 4, 5 rings, depending on the thicknesses of what you wanted out of them. So I thought to start with how we would cut it, and so we would be using the dividers, which are these tools. Calipers also very useful, and then we'll be using a ring corer. So say, for example, I specifically want a 5mm wide band, like I would then like measure 5mm on my calipers, and then use my dividers to set it to the right length. So then I'm going to use this to draw myself a guideline. First, you want to try and make sure that the top edge is quite flat. So when you're cutting the ring, you want it to sort of be as flat as possible to sort of make the most of the wax block, and then you want to then design, like carve into it. So you keep this main one flat. So I was going to say, feel free to ask me questions as we go along, or feel free to like stick stuff in the chat box, and if you're more comfortable putting it in that way, but just talk to me, like it's nice and casual. So I've got sort of a flat top. I've marked my dividers, and then I'm going to use them to basically draw myself this guideline, and I need this to keep me on track so that I'm going to cut it straight. So hopefully you can sort of see there's like a rough line on the top of that tube. So now I want to use my bench peg and my saw frame to start cutting it. So I've got my spiral saw blade in there already. And it's so soft to cut, it will cut quite quickly. What I want to do is I want to keep rotating it. So I want to keep on the guideline, but turn the wax so that I'm like cutting it in sort of all along the outside to get to the middle. If that makes sense. But basically this is going to help me keep it straight, because it's very, very easy if you're just cutting in the straight line when it's a block so big that it's just going to cut you on the wonk, and then it's just more filing to sort of straighten it back up. My slice, a little ring slice. Over there. So I've got my slimmer slice of ring, which is where I can sort of get started from. So the first thing after you've got your little slice, or however big slice you want it, is to size it. And so we do that using the ring corers. So this is a ring corer. We've only got 2 of them. So what I'm going to do after this is send down the 2 ring corers and 2 dividers to Ben in the workshop for you guys to share in between you. Just make sure that they come back to me, because that's all that we have in the workshop. But I would use the ring corer to get the right size. So basically what it is a massive pencil sharpener. So you just pop the ring in and just very gently core it around. And then you get these small little shavings to come off. So you only want to be gentle with it, because if you try and go too fast, it comes off in sort of lumps and it leaves the inside lumpy. We want the inside to be as smooth as we can get it. So we just core around. But what you do to one side, make sure to do the same to the other. So flip it. And then you can core. Then we're making sure that the inside's not tapered, that it's going to be nice and straight. What you would do is then be checking it for the size on a ring mandrel. So I can see that that's now sitting at a size L. With wax, it is a lot easier to take material away than it is to put back on. But we can put it back on, but it's just much easier if we're like coring it away or filing it away. So I would say just go slowly with it. Just do like a couple turns at a time, and then check it so that we know it's the right size. But you want to size it first, because if you're taking down like the size of the walls, if you have very thin walls and then you realize you need to size it from the inside, then you're going to sort of lose your walls as such. So we'll pop the right size in first. This is if you how you would size out of a ring tube, but you might find that you have a cylinder, so there's no hole out of the middle in the first place. So you might be trying to make it out of the sheet wax. You might find that the ring tube's too restricted and you were starting with a different shape. So if, for example, we were starting out of a cylinder of wax, we want to find out what the ring diameter is of the size that we are. So take, for example, if we were size M, inside diameter of that is 16.5. So then I would half that to get my radius. So that would be approximately 8.2. So I would then use my calipers again to get that size up, my dividers. And then with the cylinder, sorry, I can draw my circle. So hopefully we can sort of see I've got a rough guideline of a circle on there. And that should be approximately the right size. So then what I would do is I would drill a hole through here, and then I would thread my saw blade through it, like we did the same with the saw piercing in metal. It's the same sort of concept in the wax. So thread my saw blade through the hole and cut out of the middle instead of using a core. If you didn't have one of these, or if you were starting in sheet wax. Yeah. So once you have once you have the ring, then it's totally up to you as to how you sort of form it and how you design it. Like, I would be like, I use these quite a lot. So if I'm saying, okay, I want the band to be 3 mil wide, then I would again use this to set my dividers to be the right length, and then do a little circle around the inside. So I've got my guideline, and then I would start off with saw piercing this, because there's quite a lot of material that I'm trying to take away. But equally, it's not a problem for me to just be filing it and just file it and take the material away like that. Get it down to the size that I want. So you've got obviously your big file, and then you've got your needle files as well as your little carving tool. So you can sort of cut in with the carving tool and see what different sort of marks you can make with that. What you might find is that the ring snaps. So if we've got this guy, for example, that is get quite thin, because they're so it's flexible and it's just different. It's just different feel to how it feels with the metal. You sort of need the different sort of apply different pressure to it when you're filing. So want to be a bit more gentle. You might find that it snaps. And so if we've got a little snap in it, then we're going to need to fix that. So we would fix it using the hot tools. So the spirit lamp is in the workshop. So you would, any sort of hot connections or joins that we need to do, that would be next week when we're back in with the hot tools. But just wanted to chat through it a little bit. So I've got the spirit lamp, and I've got my different types of dental tools. So each dental tool has like a different head, and you can sort of pick the head that sort of is sort of most appropriate or is going to be easier. You can see that. This one that I also spoke about is the solder probe. And I find this very useful because it's just so small and pointy, and sort of can get to where I need it to go. But again, it's personal preference. But basically you would heat the tool in the top of the spirit lamp. And then we're trying to gently sort of tack it together. So I'm sort of precisely melting the wax and holding it together. It needs to sort of re-solidify. So I want to give it time to re-solidify. Poking it from the inside as well. I want to try and be careful not to have too many air bubbles in it. I want to try and be as sort of smooth a join as possible. So this is tacked together. I don't know if you can see. But you can see there's like a little gap still, because obviously from melting it. So that's when your scrap wax comes in handy. So if you've got a little bit of scrap wax, what we can do is sort of pick up a bit. So I melt my tool and then sort of try and scoop up a little bit of the wax. To then sort of drip it in place. And so this is This is what I mean about it's easier to take away than it is to build up, but this is how we would build up. So just sort of, just a little bit at a time on the surface. Make sure it's all good on the inside as well.
Could you not use the really, really soft wax to fill the gap?
You could do. Yeah, I suppose there'd be no reason why you couldn't, because you can combine all types of wax as long as it goes away, but you just want to make sure it's like quite a strong join. Yeah, this is it sort of looking lumpy. So then I would file it then to smooth it back in. To how it looked before. So then I'd be sort of good to sort of go again. It's essentially sort of slicing and melting both the halves so that it sort of can re-melt and join together. But yeah, if you so like we said, you can join all different types of wax together. So you might have a big design on the sheet wax or a big design on the soft wax, and then you want to join it to like a ring, a more accurate ring size, like or whatever the design is. It really sort of can be anything. But so for example, if you had something like this and you was trying to join it to this, so that we have this sort of thing going on, we'd want to sort of part melt both of them and sort of stick them together. So I'd maybe sort of use one of the dental tools for this and get it nice and warm, and then I'm just trying to sort of slice and stick them together. So I want to hold it in place a little bit until that like melted wax re-solidifies. So that's stuck in place. I might like go in sort of with a smaller tool and just make sure it really is sort of joined nice and securely. It's also a lot easier to clean up whilst it's still in wax than when it's in metal. So I don't know if we can see, but like there's like where it's joined, there's like the blob of melted wax around it. So I'd probably spend the time cleaning that and making sure that looked nice and smooth and was how I wanted it to be when it's in metal form, so that it's just quicker this time round, rather than filing it in the metal. The other reason why we would be joining something is if we're adding a sprue onto something, and a sprue is basically a wax rod. So once you've made the rings, then we'll be spruing them, so putting them onto a wax tree and then casting it. So when we get in the workshop, what we'll be doing is sharing wax trees. So you'll be popping these wax rods on them. So with that, I'll talk more about it when you're in the workshop, but just to sort of, whilst we're here talking about joining, you would want to join it to the like thickest point of your model. And again, it's sort of like a slice and sort of stick and sort of hold it in place. bit weak. So that's the sort of thing we'd be doing, but we wouldn't, it doesn't need to be this long, it's just how they come. So we would chop this guy and have a much shorter sprue. But so that's sort of how we would get started with rings and how we would sort of get started with repairs and joins. But yeah, how do we all feel about that? Does that make sense? Have you guys got any questions?
No, it makes sense. Thank you.
Cool. Right, well, I will let you go because obviously 5 minutes to your next thing. But I will, like I say, we'll get the ring corers, so 2 ring corers and 2 sets of dividers to help people sort of get started in the studio spaces with sizing your rings. But yeah, I will see you guys in person next week though. Thanks everyone.
Yes, thanks again.